Most people would walk right past this penny without a second glance. Yet some collectors quietly know that a small copper coin from 1971 can hold a story far bigger than its face value, and in certain cases, real money hiding in plain sight. Today we are talking about the 1971 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that millions of Americans have held in their hands without ever realizing what makes it special. At first glance, it looks ordinary. It shows a familiar face, a familiar color, and a familiar size. But once you slow down and really look at it, this penny begins to reveal a fascinating story tied to American history, everyday life, and the hidden world of coin collecting. The 1971 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is part of the long-running Lincoln cent series. When a penny from this year has no mint mark, it means it was made at the main U.S. Mint facility in Philadelphia. During that time, Philadelphia pennies did not carry a letter under the date. That missing letter is not a mistake. It is a clue. And for collectors, clues are everything. To understand why this coin exists, we need to go back to the early 1970s. The United States was going through major changes. The Vietnam War was still ongoing, inflation was rising, and American households were feeling economic pressure. Coinage needed to be produced in massive numbers to keep everyday commerce moving. In 1971 alone, hundreds of millions of Lincoln pennies were struck to meet demand. The design itself was already iconic. On the front of the coin is the profile of Abraham Lincoln, a design that had been introduced back in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of his birth. By 1971, this portrait was one of the most recognized images in the country. It represented honesty, unity, and resilience, values that felt especially important during uncertain times. On the back of the coin, you find the Lincoln Memorial, a design first introduced in 1959. This marked a shift from the earlier wheat stalk design and symbolized national remembrance and respect. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny seated figure of Lincoln inside the memorial, a detail many people miss entirely. The reverse design features the words United States of America, E pluribus unum, and 1 cent, all surrounding the image of the memorial. The 1971 no-mint mark penny is made primarily of copper. At that time, pennies were composed of about 95% copper and 5% zinc. This is important because just a year later, rising copper prices would force the U.S. Mint to rethink how pennies were made. That makes the 1971 penny part of the final era of traditional copper cents. Adding to its historical appeal point, one of the most interesting things about this coin is how ordinary it seems. That ordinariness is exactly why people overlook it. Yet collectors know that value does not always come from rarity alone. It comes from condition, errors, and historical context. And this penny has all three working quietly in its favor. So why would a 1971 no-mint mark penny be valuable at all if so many were made? The answer lies in quality and mistakes. While millions were produced, very few survived in perfect or near-perfect condition. Most were used in circulation, scratched, worn down, or discolored over decades of use. Finding one with sharp details, original shine, and no damage is far more difficult than it sounds. Then there are mint errors. Errors are accidents that happen during the minting process, and they are highly prized by collectors. Some 1971 pennies were struck off-center, meaning the design is not properly aligned. Others show double die errors, where parts of the lettering or date appear doubled due to a misalignment in the dies. There are also pennies with clipped planchets, where a portion of the metal blank was missing before the coin was struck. These errors transform a common penny into something special. A normal circulated 1971 penny might be worth only a few cents, but an error coin can be worth tens, hundreds, or even thousands of dollars depending on the severity and clarity of the mistake. Collectors have seen strong results at auctions. High-grade 1971 no-mint mark pennies, especially those graded by professional services, have sold for impressive prices. In pristine condition with full original luster, some examples have reached several $100s. Error coins from this year have gone even higher, particularly dramatic double die examples that clearly show doubling in the date or lettering. What makes these auction results exciting is that many of these coins were found in everyday places. Old jars, inherited collections, and forgotten piggy banks have all produced valuable examples. That sense of possibility is what keeps collectors searching through rolls of pennies even today. Of course, with value comes the risk of fakes or altered coins. Identifying a real 1971 no-mint mark penny is not difficult if you know what to look for. First, check the date. It should clearly read 1971. Then look just below the date. If there is no letter like D or S, it was made in Philadelphia. That is normal and correct. Next, examine the weight and color. A genuine 1971 penny should weigh around 3.11 grams and have the warm reddish-brown tone of copper. Pennies that are too light, oddly colored, or magnetic may have been altered or are not authentic. Magnification helps as well. A real double die error will show clear separation in letters, not flat or machine-like doubling. Serious collectors often send valuable coins to professional grading services. These organizations authenticate the coin, assign it a grade, and seal it in a protective holder. This not only confirms authenticity but also helps establish market value. There are also fun and surprising details tied to this coin. Many people do not realize that the Lincoln Memorial design was nearing the end of its run. In 2009, the reverse design would change to commemorate Lincoln's early life, and later to a shield design. That means the 1971 penny belongs to a long but now closed chapter in U.S. coinage history. Another fun fact is that during the early 1970s, pennies were still powerful purchasing tools. You could buy candy, make a phone call, or get change at a local store with just a few cents. This gives the 1971 penny a nostalgic connection to everyday American life that modern coins simply do not have. Collectors today love the 1971 no-mint mark penny because it represents a perfect balance. It is old enough to be historical but common enough that people can realistically hope to find one. It encourages learning, patience, and curiosity. Every time someone looks closely at a penny, they are participating in a tradition that stretches back more than a century. This coin also reminds us that value is not always obvious. Something small and ordinary can hold a deeper story, shaped by history, economics, and human error. That idea resonates far beyond coin collecting. So the next time you see a penny dated 1971, do not rush past it. Hold it up to the light. Look at the details. Think about where it has been and how many hands it has passed through. That tiny copper coin may not make you rich overnight, but it might just connect you to a hidden world of history and possibility. And who knows, the next time you hear the soft clink of a penny on a table, it might be the sound of a story waiting to be discovered. What if I told you that one of the most overlooked pennies in American history might already be sitting in a jar in your home, quietly carrying a story of change, controversy, and collector obsession that most people never notice? Today we're talking about the 1979 D-Mint Mark Lincoln penny, a coin so common on the surface that it's often ignored, yet so interesting once you slow down and really look at it. This is a penny that comes from a turning point in U.S. coin history, a time when America was dealing with rising costs, changing metals, and a renewed interest in everyday money. And while most examples are worth just 1 cent, a few special ones have surprised collectors in ways no one expected. The 1979 D. Lincoln penny was struck in 1979 at the Denver Mint and released into circulation as part of the long-running Lincoln Cent series. At first glance, it looks like a regular penny, the kind you've seen your entire life. But coins are time capsules, and this one reflects the economic pressures and design traditions of the late 1970s in the United States. To understand why this penny exists, we need to step back for a moment. By 1979, the Lincoln Cent had already been around for 70 years. It was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of the birth of Abraham Lincoln. That alone made it historic because it was the first regular U.S. coin to feature a real person instead of a symbolic figure like Liberty. The designer of the Lincoln penny was Victor David Brenner, and his portrait of Lincoln became one of the most recognizable images in American history. By the time 1979 rolled around, the design was already deeply familiar. But what was happening behind the scenes was far more interesting than the design itself. The late 1970s were a difficult time for the U.S. economy. Inflation was high, metal prices were rising, and the government was under pressure to keep coin production affordable. Copper, in particular, was becoming expensive. At this point, pennies were still made primarily of copper, but the cost of producing them was creeping closer to their face value. This problem would eventually lead to major changes in the 1980s, but in 1979, the penny was still holding on to its traditional composition. That means the 1979 D penny is made of about 95% copper and 5% zinc, giving it that classic reddish-brown color many people associate with older pennies. It also weighs about 3.11 grams, heavier than modern pennies made after the composition change. This alone makes it feel different in the hand, even if most people don't consciously notice it. On the front of the coin, you'll see Lincoln's profile facing right. The word Liberty appears behind him, while the date 1979 is placed in front of his face. Just below the date is the small but important D mint mark, showing that this penny was struck in Denver. That single letter is crucial because pennies from different mints can have very different values depending on condition and rarity. Flip the coin over, and you'll see the Lincoln Memorial, which had been on the reverse of the penny since 1959. Above the memorial are the words United States of America and E pluribus unum, while 1 cent is written below. Inside the memorial, if you look closely, you can actually see a tiny statue of Lincoln seated in the center. This level of detail is one of the reasons collectors still appreciate this design. So why would anyone care about a penny that was minted by the hundreds of millions? The answer lies in condition, errors, and the psychology of collecting. The Denver Mint produced an enormous number of pennies in 1979, which means worn examples are extremely common. But finding one in pristine condition with full original luster and no damage is far more difficult than you might think. Coins are graded on a scale, and the difference between a nice-looking penny and a truly exceptional one can be dramatic in terms of value. A circulated 1979 D penny is usually worth just 1 cent, maybe 2 or 3 cents if it has a pleasing color. But a high-grade uncirculated example can sell for several dollars, and in some cases much more. Errors are where things get especially interesting. During the minting process, mistakes can happen. Dies can become damaged, coins can be struck off-center, or details can appear doubled. Some 1979 D pennies have been found with doubling on the date or lettering, known as double die errors. Others show repunched mint marks, where the D appears slightly doubled or distorted. These errors turn an ordinary penny into something unique. Collectors love them because they represent accidents that slipped through quality control, creating one-of-a-kind variations. When authenticated, error coins from this year and mint can sell for tens or even hundreds of dollars, depending on the type and severity of the mistake. There have been real auction examples that surprised even seasoned collectors. High-grade 1979 D pennies certified by professional grading services have sold for well over $10, sometimes much more if the coin has exceptional eye appeal. Error coins have reached even higher prices, especially when multiple collectors compete for a scarce variety. Now, you might be wondering how to tell if the penny you're holding is real or just a normal coin. Fortunately, fakes are not very common for this issue, because most examples aren't worth enough to justify counterfeiting. Still, it's good to know what to look for. A genuine 1979 D penny should weigh close to 3.11 grams. It should not stick to a magnet because it contains no steel. The details should be sharp, especially in Lincoln's hair and the lines of the memorial. If the coin looks unusually light, has strange surface bubbles, or feels wrong in the hand, it could be damaged or altered. If you think you've found an error coin, resist the urge to clean it. Cleaning almost always reduces a coin's value. Instead, compare it to images from trusted coin references, or consider having it examined by a professional. One fun fact about the 1979 D penny is that it comes from the final years of the traditional copper cent. Just a few years later, the U.S. Mint would switch to a mostly zinc composition with a thin copper coating. That makes coins like this a sort of farewell to an era, even though no one realized it at the time. Another surprising detail is how many people unknowingly saved these pennies. During the 1970s, many Americans began hoarding coins because of inflation fears and memories of silver disappearing from circulation. As a result, there are still original rolls of 1979 D pennies tucked away in drawers, basements, and safety deposit boxes. Collectors today love this coin not because it's flashy or rare in the traditional sense, but because it represents a familiar piece of everyday history. It's a reminder that even the smallest denomination carries meaning. For beginners, it's an accessible entry point into coin collecting. For advanced collectors, It's a challenge to find the best possible example or an unusual error. There's also something deeply satisfying about discovering value where others see nothing. The idea that a penny you've ignored for decades might be worth more than face value taps into a universal sense of curiosity and hope. That feeling is at the heart of collecting. As we look back at the 1979 Lincoln penny, we're really looking at a snapshot of America at the end of the 1970s. A nation dealing with economic pressure, holding on to tradition, and quietly preparing for change. This humble coin passed through millions of hands, bought candy, paid taxes, and disappeared into couches and jars, all while carrying its story with you. So the next time you see a penny dated 1979 with a small D beneath the date, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a moment to examine it. You might just be holding a tiny piece of history, a survivor from the last days of the copper cent, waiting for someone curious enough to notice. And who knows? The most interesting coins are often the ones hiding in plain sight, just waiting for the right person to ask, "What's this really worth?" Most people would never stop to look at a penny dated 1990, yet somewhere right now, that exact coin could be sitting quietly in a jar, a drawer, or even your pocket, holding a story that almost no one tells. What looks like ordinary pocket change may actually be a small piece of American history that collectors still search for today. This is the story of the 1990 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin millions of Americans have handled, but very few have truly understood. At first glance, it looks simple, familiar, almost boring. But when you slow down and really look at it, this penny begins to reveal why it still matters more than 3 decades later. The 1990 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin struck in the United States in the year 1990. The phrase no-mint mark means the coin was produced at the Philadelphia Mint, which traditionally did not place a mint mark on pennies during that time. So if you look just below the date and see no small letter, that's exactly how it was meant to be. In 1990, the United States was standing at the edge of a new decade. The Cold War was ending, technology was advancing rapidly, and everyday Americans were heading into the final years before the digital age would change daily life forever. Coins like this penny passed through countless hands during that transition, quietly witnessing history without anyone noticing. The Lincoln penny itself has a long and meaningful past. First introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, it was the first U.S. coin to feature a real historical person. By 1990, Lincoln had already appeared on the penny for more than 80 years, making him one of the most recognizable faces in American currency. The design of the 1990 penny follows the classic Lincoln memorial style. On the front, you see Lincoln's calm profile facing right, with the words "In God We Trust" above his head. To the left is the word "Liberty," and to the right is the date, 1990. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial stands tall with 1 cent and United States of America clearly visible, and the phrase "E pluribus unum" resting above the building. But beneath this familiar design lies something many people don't realize. By 1990, the penny was no longer made mostly of copper like older coins. Instead, it was made of zinc with a thin copper coating. This change happened in 1982 to reduce costs, but it created subtle differences in weight, sound, and even how the coin ages over time. A 1990 penny weighs about 2.5 grams. It may look solid, but the copper layer is extremely thin. Over time, this coating can wear down, exposing the gray zinc underneath. Coins with damaged surfaces or bubbling are often the result of zinc reacting to moisture or air once that copper layer breaks. So if millions were made, why do collectors still care about the 1990 no-mint mark penny? The answer lies in condition, errors, and history. While the average worn example is worth just 1 cent, pennies that survived in exceptional condition are a different story. Coins that were never circulated, never scratched, and never dulled by years of handling can be worth significantly more to collectors. Some 1990 pennies were carefully preserved straight from original rolls or mint sets. These coins can still show sharp details, bright surfaces, and strong original luster. When graded by professional services, high-grade examples can command surprising prices. Even more exciting are error coins. Errors happen when something goes wrong during the minting process, and they turn ordinary coins into rare collectibles. For 1990 pennies, known errors include off-center strikes, where the design is noticeably shifted, double dies that show extra thickness or doubling in letters or numbers, and broad strikes where the coin spreads out wider than normal. There have also been cases of clipped planchets, where a piece of the coin blank was missing before striking. These errors are accidental, unpredictable, and impossible to reproduce, which is exactly why collectors love them. At auctions and coin shows, pristine 1990 no-mint mark pennies graded in top condition have sold for prices that surprise people. While they won't reach the millions, some have sold for tens, hundreds, or even over $1,000 depending on grade and rarity. Error examples can sell for even more, especially when the mistake is dramatic and clearly visible. Collectors are not just paying for metal. They are paying for preservation, scarcity, and the story behind the coin. A flawless penny from 1990 is rare simply because most pennies were used, abused, and forgotten. Knowing how to identify a genuine 1990 no-mint mark penny is important. First, check the date. It should clearly read 1990. Then look closely below the date. There should be no letter, no D, no S, just a clean space. That confirms it came from Philadelphia. Next, weigh the coin if possible. A normal example should weigh around 2.5 grams. If it is much heavier or lighter, it may be damaged, altered, or possibly an error worth further inspection. Examine the edges. A real penny has a smooth edge with no reading. Be cautious of coins that look too perfect but show signs of tampering. Some altered coins are created by plating or polishing, which actually lowers their value. Real collectible value comes from originality, not shine. There are also fun details that make this penny more interesting than it first appears. If you look closely at the Lincoln Memorial on the back, you can actually see Lincoln's statue inside the building. This tiny detail was intentional and shows how much care went into the design. Another surprising fact is that in 1990, pennies cost almost as much to make as they were worth. This sparked debates that continue today about whether the penny should still exist at all. Yet here it is, still minted, still collected, still sparking curiosity. Collectors today appreciate the 1990 no-mint mark penny because it represents a turning point. It comes from the modern era, yet it still connects to traditional coin design and everyday use. It is old enough to be nostalgic, but recent enough that many people remember using it without thinking twice. For beginner collectors, this coin is approachable. You don't need to spend a fortune to start searching for one. You might already have it. For advanced collectors, high-grade and error examples offer challenge and excitement. The real magic of this penny is not just its value, but its reminder that history often hides in plain sight. Something as small as a 1-cent coin can carry decades of stories, changes, and quiet significance. So the next time you see a penny dated 1990, don't rush past it. Turn it over. Look closely. Ask yourself where it's been, whose hands it passed through, and what moments it silently witnessed. Because sometimes, the most ordinary objects tell the most unexpected stories. And that simple 1990 no-mint mark Lincoln penny might just be waiting for someone to finally notice it. Most people walk past this penny every day without giving it a second thought. It looks ordinary, it feels ordinary, and it often ends up forgotten in a jar or lost under a couch. But what if I told you that one specific penny from the early 1990s has a story that quietly fascinates collectors, hides surprising details, and in certain cases can be worth far more than 1 cent? Today, we're talking about the 1992 D Mint Mark Lincoln penny, a coin that proves even modern pocket change can hold secrets. At first glance, the 1992 D Lincoln penny seems completely familiar. It's a 1-cent coin from the United States, featuring the profile of Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. The small letter D below the date tells us it was struck at the Denver Mint, one of the main branches of the United States Mint. Millions of these pennies were made, and for most people that sounds like the end of the story. But for collectors, that's exactly where the story begins. To understand this coin, we need to step back to the year 1992. America was in a time of transition. The Cold War had recently ended, technology was beginning to move faster, and everyday life was quietly changing. The U.S. Mint was still producing billions of pennies each year to keep up with demand. In 1992, pennies were used constantly in stores, vending machines, and daily transactions. The Lincoln cent was already a symbol of American history, having been introduced back in 1909 to honor Lincoln's 100th birthday. By 1992, the design was well known and deeply familiar to the public. The 1992 D penny follows the classic Lincoln Memorial design that had been in use since 1959. On the front, Lincoln's calm profile faces to the right, with the word Liberty behind him and the date and motto "In God We Trust" in front. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial stands tall, and if you look closely, you can actually see a tiny statue of Lincoln seated inside the memorial. This detail is one of the most interesting parts of the design. Even though many people never notice in terms of metal, the 1992 D penny is made primarily of zinc with a thin copper coating. This composition began in 1982, when rising copper prices forced the mint to change materials. That means this penny is much lighter than older copper pennies and has a different sound if dropped on a table. While this change made the penny cheaper to produce, it also created new opportunities for errors and variations, which collectors pay close attention to. Now here's where things start to get interesting. On its own, a regular 1992 D penny in circulated condition is usually worth just 1 cent. You might find one in your pocket today. But collectors are not looking for the average example. They are searching for specific conditions, unusual details, and rare mistakes that can turn this common coin into something special. One of the most important factors is condition. A 1992 D penny that has never been circulated, meaning it has no wear, no scratches, and retains its original shine, can be worth significantly more than face value. Coins like this are often called uncirculated, and when professionally graded, they can sell for several dollars or more, depending on how perfect they are. While that may not sound life-changing, it's impressive for a coin that most people ignore. Errors are where the real excitement begins. Some 1992 D pennies were struck with small mistakes during the minting process. These errors can include off-center strikes, where the design is not properly aligned, double details where letters or numbers appear slightly repeated, or unusual marks caused by damaged equipment. These errors are rare, and collectors love them because they tell a story of what went wrong inside the mint on a specific day. There is also constant interest in close and wide spacing between letters, especially on the back of Lincoln Memorial pennies. While the most famous spacing varieties are from Philadelphia Mint coins, collectors still carefully examine Denver Mint pennies from this era, hoping to find something unusual. Even small differences can make a big impact on value. So what about real money? What have people actually paid for these coins? Auction records show that high-grade 1992 D pennies, especially those certified by professional grading services, have sold for anywhere from a few dollars to over $100 in exceptional cases. Error coins can sell for even more, depending on how dramatic and visible the mistake is. These sales may not make headlines, but for collectors, they are proof that modern coins can still be worth hunting. Identifying a genuine 1992 D penny is fairly simple, but doing it carefully matters. First, check the date on the front. It should clearly read 1992. Then look just below the date for the small letter D, which indicates the Denver Mint. The coin should weigh about 2.5 grams, which matches the zinc composition. The color should be coppery, not silvery. If it looks unusually shiny or oddly colored, it may have been altered or damaged. Be cautious of coins that seem too perfect or are advertised as rare without proof. Real valuable examples are usually backed by professional grading or clear documentation. If you think you've found something special, avoid cleaning the coin. Cleaning can actually destroy value by damaging the surface. There are also some fun facts about this penny that many people don't know. Even though pennies are often criticized for being nearly worthless, the Lincoln cent is one of the longest-running designs in U.S. history. The 1992 D penny represents the final decade of the Lincoln Memorial reverse, which would eventually be replaced in 2009. That gives it a quiet historical importance as part of the end of an era. Another surprising detail is how many of these pennies were saved without people realizing it. Jars, drawers, and old collections often contain uncirculated coins simply because they were never used. That means valuable examples could still be hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone curious enough to look closely. Collectors today love the 1992 D Lincoln penny because it's accessible. You don't need to be wealthy to search for one. You don't need special equipment to recognize it. It represents the thrill of discovery. the idea that history and value can exist in everyday objects. For many collectors, finding a high-grade or rare example of this coin is what sparks a lifelong interest in numismatics. This penny also reminds us that value isn't always about age. While older coins often get the spotlight, modern coins like the 1992 D penny show that condition, rarity, and story matter just as much. It connects the past to the present in a way that feels personal and tangible, so the next time you see a penny on the ground or hear one clink in your pocket, take a moment to look at it. Check the date. Look for that tiny D mint mark. You might be holding a small piece of American history, quietly waiting to be noticed. And who knows, the most ordinary coin you've ever seen might turn out to be far more interesting than you ever imagined. Most people would walk right past this penny without a second thought. But what if I told you that a single 1994 Lincoln penny with no mint mark could be hiding a story that turns pocket change into something far more interesting? This is the kind of coin that sits quietly in jars and drawers, while collectors know exactly what to look for. Today we're talking about the 1994 no mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that many Americans have handled, spent, or ignored, yet very few truly understand. It's not flashy. It's not gold or silver, but it carries history, subtle details, and just enough mystery to make it worth a closer look. The 1994 Lincoln penny is part of the long-running Lincoln cent series, first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of the birth of Abraham Lincoln. By 1994, this design had already been in circulation for decades, making it one of the most familiar coins in American history. That familiarity is exactly why so many people overlook the importance of specific years and details. When we say no mint mark, we're referring to where the coin was made. In the United States, pennies struck in Philadelphia traditionally do not carry a mint mark. So a 1994 penny with no letter under the date means it was minted in Philadelphia, the oldest and one of the most historically important U.S. mints operated by the United States Mint.in 1994. The United States was producing billions of pennies to keep up with everyday commerce. This was a time when cash was still king, vending machines were everywhere, and pennies were used constantly. The Philadelphia Mint alone struck over 4 billion Lincoln cents that year. On the surface, that number makes the coin seem incredibly common. And in most cases, it is. But coin collecting has never been just about how many were made. It's about condition, variation, and mistakes that slipped through quality control. And this is where the 1994 no mint mark Lincoln penny becomes far more interesting. The coin itself is made primarily of zinc with a thin copper coating. This change in metal composition began in 1982, when rising copper prices made solid copper pennies too expensive to produce. So while older Lincoln cents feel heavier and richer, the 1994 penny reflects a modern era of cost efficiency. Despite that, the design remains deeply traditional. On the front of the coin, you'll see Lincoln's profile, dignified and calm, facing right. Above his head is the word liberty, and in front of his face is the phrase "In God We Trust." Below is the date, 1994. The absence of a mint mark under the date is what confirms it was made in Philadelphia. On the reverse, the familiar Lincoln Memorial design dominates the coin. This design was introduced in 1959 and used until 2008. If you look closely, you can actually see a tiny seated statue of Lincoln inside the memorial, making him one of the few people to appear on both sides of the same U.S. coin. That memorial represents the real-life Lincoln Memorial, tying everyday pocket change to a powerful national symbol. So where does rarity come into play with a coin that was minted by the billions? The answer lies in errors and condition. Most 1994 no mint mark pennies are only worth 1 cent. But certain examples stand out dramatically. Coins with minting errors can be worth many times their face value. These errors include off-center strikes, where the design is noticeably shifted, broad strikes with no defined rim, clipped planchets where part of the coin is missing, and doubled dies where letters or numbers appear slightly doubled. One of the most talked about possibilities is the doubled die obverse. On these coins, parts of the lettering, especially "In God We Trust" or the date, appear doubled to the naked eye. These are not common, and when authenticated, they can attract serious collector interest. Condition is just as important. A 1994 penny that has never circulated, meaning it shows no wear, no scratches, and retains its original mint luster, can be graded as mint state. Professional grading services use a scale from MS-60 to MS-70. While most circulated examples are worth almost nothing, a high-grade mint state 1994 no-mint mark penny can sell for several dollars, and in exceptional cases, even more. Real auction results help tell the story. Uncirculated rolls of 1994 Philadelphia pennies have sold for modest premiums, especially when the coins are bright, clean, and original. Individual coins graded MS-67 red by major grading services have sold at auction for over $100. That may not sound life-changing, but for a penny that most people wouldn't bend down to pick up, it's impressive. Error coins take things even further. A clear off-center 1994 no-mint mark penny has sold for several $100s, depending on how dramatic the error is and how well the coin is preserved. These are the kinds of coins collectors actively search for, often spending hours checking pocket change or bank rolls. Of course, with value comes the risk of fakes or misunderstandings. The good news is that the 1994 no-mint mark penny is not commonly counterfeited because the base coin is so common. However, altered coins do exist. Some people attempt to create fake errors by damaging coins intentionally, filing edges, or altering surfaces. To identify a real example, start with weight. A genuine 1994 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. Significant differences could indicate damage or alteration. Look closely at the surfaces under good lighting. Real mint errors usually have smooth, natural metal flow, while fake damage often looks rough or unnatural. If you believe you found a valuable example, professional authentication is key. Reputable grading services can confirm whether a coin is genuine and assign it a grade that the collector market recognizes. This step often makes the difference between a coin that's hard to sell and one that collectors compete for. There are also fun and surprising facts about the 1994 penny that many people don't know. For example, pennies from this era are more prone to bubbling and peeling because of their zinc core and thin copper coating. While this damage usually lowers value, it also helps collectors identify genuine composition issues versus older solid copper cents. Another interesting detail is that children born in 1994 are now adults, yet the pennies minted that year are still circulating. That means you can find a coin older than many drivers, students, and professionals, still quietly doing its job. Collectors love the 1994 no-mint mark Lincoln penny not because it's rare in the traditional sense, but because it represents opportunity. It's a reminder that valuable coins don't always come from ancient history or exotic metals. Sometimes they come from patience, knowledge, and a careful eye. This coin also appeals to beginners. It's affordable, accessible, and easy to find, making it a perfect entry point into coin collecting. At the same time, it offers enough depth through errors and high-grade examples to keep experienced collectors interested, so the next time you see a 1994 penny, don't rush to spend it. Turn it over. Check the date. Look for that missing mint mark. Examine the details, because even the most ordinary-looking coin can carry a story, and sometimes, a small but meaningful value. In a world where people chase the rarest and most expensive treasures, the 1994 no-mint mark Lincoln penny reminds us that history is often hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone curious enough to notice. Imagine holding a penny in your hand that looks completely ordinary, one you might have ignored your entire life, yet it could quietly be telling a fascinating story about American history, modern minting, and hidden surprises that most people never notice. What if I told you that a simple penny from the year 2000, with no mint mark, might be far more interesting than you ever imagined? Today we're diving into the story of the 2000 no mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that millions of people have handled without ever giving it a second thought. At first glance, it looks like just another 1-cent coin. But once you understand why it was made, what makes it different from older pennies, and why collectors still search through their change for this exact coin, you start to see it in a completely new light. The 2000 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is part of the long-running Lincoln Cent series, one of the most iconic coin designs in American history. The front of the coin features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, a design that has appeared on U.S. pennies since 1909. The year 2000 is especially meaningful because it marked the beginning of a new millennium, a moment that symbolized change, progress, and a bridge between centuries. Coins minted during milestone years often attract extra attention, and this penny is no exception. When people talk about a no-mint mark penny, it can sound confusing at first. In the United States, coins are produced at different mint facilities. Most modern coins carry a small letter showing where they were made. A D means Denver, an S means San Francisco, but pennies made at the Philadelphia Mint traditionally carry no mint mark at all. So when you see a 2000 penny with no letter under the date, it means it was struck at the Philadelphia facility operated by the United States Mint. The year 2000 was a busy one for penny production. The U.S. Mint struck billions of Lincoln cents to keep up with everyday circulation needs. At the same time, the country was celebrating the turn of the millennium. While there was no special redesign for the penny that year, the context of the time gives the coin a quiet historical importance. It represents the everyday money Americans were using as the world stepped into the 21st century. One of the most important things to understand about the 2000 Lincoln penny is its metal composition. Unlike older pennies made mostly of copper, the 2000 penny is made of a zinc core coated with a thin layer of copper. This change happened in 1982, when rising copper prices made it too expensive to continue producing solid copper cents. As a result, modern pennies like the 2000 issue feel lighter and sound different when dropped compared to older copper coins. The design itself is classic and familiar. On the front, Lincoln faces to the right, with inscriptions that include the year, the word liberty, and the phrase "In God We Trust." On the back, you'll find the Lincoln Memorial, a design used from 1959 to 2008. If you look closely at the memorial, you can actually see a tiny statue of Lincoln sitting inside it, making this one of the few U.S. coins to feature the same person on both sides. So if billions were made, why do people talk about the 2000 no-mint mark penny as collectible? The answer lies in condition, errors, and human behavior. While most of these pennies are worth just 1 cent, collectors are always searching for coins that stand out from the rest. A penny that survived more than 2 decades in near-perfect condition is already uncommon. One that shows a minting error can suddenly become very desirable. Some of the known errors associated with the 2000 Lincoln penny include off-center strikes, where the design is noticeably shifted, broad strikes, where the coin was struck without a proper collar, and double die errors, where parts of the lettering or date appear doubled. These errors happened during the high-speed minting process and slipped into circulation unnoticed. To most people, they look like mistakes. To collectors, they're treasures. There have been real-world examples of 2000 no-mint mark pennies selling for impressive prices. A standard circulated example might be worth only face value, but uncirculated coins with strong luster can sell for a few dollars. When grading services certify a coin as being in near-perfect condition, values can climb higher. Error coins are where things get truly interesting. Certain dramatic errors from this year have sold for hundreds of dollars at auction, depending on how visible and unusual the mistake is. It's important to be realistic, though. Not every 2000 penny is valuable, and stories of ordinary examples selling for huge sums are often exaggerated. The real value comes from rarity within the common. That means condition, eye appeal, and verified errors matter far more than just the date alone. If you're curious whether you might have a valuable 2000 no-mint mark penny, there are a few simple steps you can take. First, look closely at the date and the area below it. If there is no letter, it was made in Philadelphia. Next, examine the coin under good lighting. Look for doubling in the numbers or letters, unusual shapes, or areas where the design seems incomplete or misaligned. Compare it to another penny from the same year to spot differences. Weight can also tell a story. A normal 2000 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. A significant difference could indicate a mint error or damage. Be careful, though, because damage after leaving the mint does not usually add value. True mint errors happen during production and often have a very specific appearance. One surprising fact about the 2000 Lincoln penny is how many people unknowingly save them. Because the year 2000 feels special, many individuals set these coins aside when they first appeared, even without knowing anything about coin collecting. As a result, rolls of uncirculated 2000 pennies still exist today, tucked away in drawers and boxes. This makes high-grade examples more available than some older dates, but it also keeps interest alive among new collectors. Collectors love this coin not because it is rare in the traditional sense, but because it represents a moment in time. It's a snapshot of everyday America at the dawn of a new millennium. It's affordable, accessible, and easy to find, which makes it a perfect entry point for beginners. At the same time, the hunt for errors and top-condition examples keeps experienced collectors engaged. There's also something deeply satisfying about finding value in something so small and overlooked. Penny doesn't seem important. It's the coin people leave behind in take-a-penny trays or forget in couch cushions. Yet the 2000 no-mint mark Lincoln penny reminds us that history isn't always found in gold or silver. Sometimes it's hiding in plain sight, in the change we've been carrying for years. As time goes on, fewer of these pennies will remain in pristine condition. Circulation wears them down, and many are lost or damaged. That slow process is what gradually creates scarcity. While the 2000 penny may never be the rarest coin in American history, its story continues to grow with each passing year. So the next time you get change back at a store, take a moment to look closely at your pennies. Check the date. Look for that missing mint mark. You might not strike it rich, but you'll be holding a small piece of modern American history in your hand. And sometimes the real value isn't just in what a coin is worth, but in the story it has to tell and the curiosity it sparks every time someone stops to take a closer look. Most people would never guess that a simple penny from 2001, the kind that still turns up in pocket change, could carry a story worth telling. But what if I told you that one quiet detail on this coin, something most people never notice, is exactly why collectors stop and take a second look? This coin is the 2001 no-mint mark Lincoln penny. At first glance, it looks ordinary. The small, copper-colored, and familiar. But like many U.S. coins, its real story is hidden in the details. To understand why this penny matters, we need to go back to the year it was made and the moment in American history it represents. The year 2001 was a turning point in many ways. It marked the beginning of a new century and a new millennium. The United States Mint was producing billions of coins to meet everyday demand, and pennies were still a vital part of daily transactions. Vending machines, parking meters, and cash registers across the country relied on them. In that year, Lincoln cents were struck at multiple U.S. mint facilities, but the ones made in Philadelphia were produced without a mint mark. That missing letter is exactly what no mint mark means on U.S. coins. A small letter usually tells you where the coin was made. A D means Denver. An S means San Francisco. But for most of its history, the Philadelphia Mint did not place a mint mark on pennies. So when you see a 2001 Lincoln penny with no letter under the date, it means it was struck in Philadelphia, the oldest operating mint in the United States. The Lincoln penny itself has a long and important history. First introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of Abraham Lincoln, it was the first regular U.S. coin to feature a real person. By 2001, the design had already been in circulation for over 90 years, making it one of the most recognizable coins in American life. The obverse, or front, of the 2001 penny shows Lincoln's profile facing right. Above his head is the word Liberty, a reminder of the values the coin was meant to represent. In front of his face is the familiar motto, "In God We Trust." And just below the date is the space where a mint mark would appear if there was one. On no mint mark coins, that space is empty. The reverse, or back, of the coin features the Lincoln Memorial, a design introduced in 1959. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny seated statue of Lincoln inside the memorial. This detail is so small that many people never notice it, yet it makes the Lincoln Memorial reverse one of the most intricate designs ever used on a U.S. circulating coin. In terms of metal, the 2001 Lincoln penny is made primarily of zinc with a thin copper coating. This composition was introduced in 1982 as a cost-saving measure, replacing the older solid copper cents. Each coin weighs about 2.5 grams and measures just under 1 inch in diameter. While this might sound like ordinary information, it becomes very important when collectors examine coins for errors or unusual variations. So if billions of these pennies were made, why would anyone care about a 2001 no-mint mark example? The answer lies in condition, errors, and the psychology of collecting. In average circulated condition, a 2001 no-mint mark penny is usually worth just 1 cent. That's the truth, and any honest collector will tell you that most of these coins are not rare. But coin collecting has never been only about face value. It's about finding exceptions. It's about the few coins that slipped through the system slightly different from the rest. One of the main reasons collectors search for 2001 no-mint mark pennies is the possibility of mint errors. Errors happen when something goes wrong during the striking process. These mistakes are not intentional, but when they occur, they create coins that are unique. Some known errors for 2001 Lincoln pennies include off-center strikes, where the design is not perfectly aligned, leaving part of the coin blank. There are also broad strikes, where the coin spreads out wider than normal because it was struck without the retaining collar. Die cracks, which look like raised lines running across the coin, are another feature collectors look for. Even double dies, where parts of the design appear slightly doubled, can sometimes be found. When a 2001 no-mint mark penny has a clear and dramatic error, its value can increase significantly. Depending on the type and visibility of the error, collectors have paid anywhere from $20 to several $100s for a single penny. In rare cases, especially with certified examples in excellent condition, prices can go even higher. Condition is another major factor. Most pennies enter circulation and get worn down quickly. They pick up scratches, dull spots, and discoloration. But some 2001 pennies were saved right from the start, often in rolls or mint sets. Coins in pristine, uncirculated condition, especially those graded by professional services, are far less common than circulated ones. At auction, high-grade 2001 no-mint mark pennies have sold for impressive amounts relative to their face value. While we're not talking about millions of dollars, a single cent selling for $50, $100, or even a few $100s still captures attention. It's proof that even modern coins can become valuable under the right circumstances. Of course, whenever money is involved, questions about authenticity come up. Fortunately, Lincoln pennies are difficult to fake in a convincing way, but alterations do happen. Some people try to remove mint marks from Denver coins to make them look like Philadelphia issues. Under magnification, these alterations often leave tool marks or unnatural surfaces where the mint mark used to be. To identify a genuine 2001 no-mint mark penny, start with the basics. Check the weight. A genuine coin should weigh around 2.5 grams. Look at the color and surface texture. The copper plating should be even, without bubbling or peeling. Examine the area below the date carefully. On a real no-mint mark coin, the surface will be smooth and consistent, not scratched or damaged. Collectors also recommend comparing your coin to a known genuine example. Subtle differences become easier to spot when you have a reference. And for coins that appear especially valuable, professional grading is the safest option. There are also some fun and surprising details about the 2001 penny that many people don't know. For example, 2001 was one of the last years before major design changes began to be discussed for the Lincoln cent. Within a decade, the reverse design would be altered to celebrate Lincoln's bicentennial and eventually replaced with the Union Shield. That makes the 2001 Lincoln Memorial penny part of the final chapter of a long-running design era. Another interesting fact is how many people unknowingly have these coins. Millions of 2001 no-mint mark pennies are still sitting in jars, drawers, and old piggy banks. Most will never be worth more than face value, but the possibility that one could be special is what keeps collectors searching. Collectors love this coin not because it's rare by default, but because it represents opportunity. It's a reminder that you don't always need gold or silver to start collecting. Sometimes all it takes is paying attention to the smallest details in everyday objects. For beginners, the 2001 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is often a gateway coin. It teaches the basics of mint marks, condition, and errors. For experienced collectors, it's a challenge coin, one that rewards patience and careful observation. And maybe that's the real appeal. This penny asks you to slow down, to look closer, to question what you think you know about value. Because every now and then, the most ordinary object in your hand turns out to have an extraordinary story behind it. So the next time you see a penny dated 2001, don't dismiss it too quickly. Turn it over. Check the date. Look for that missing mint mark. Because even if it's only worth a cent today, it connects you to history, craftsmanship, and the quiet thrill of discovery. And in the world of coin collecting, that curiosity is often where the real value begins. Imagine checking your loose change and realizing the penny in your hand might be more interesting than you ever thought. A coin you have probably spent without a second glance could carry a hidden story, a quiet mystery, and for some collectors, real value. Today we're talking about one of those coins that feels ordinary at first but becomes fascinating the moment you slow down and really look at it. The 2004 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny. At first glance, this coin looks just like millions of other pennies. It shows the familiar face of Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. Most people never stop to examine it. But collectors know that even modern pennies can have stories worth telling, and sometimes worth money. This is not a gold rush coin or a century-old relic, but it represents a moment in American history and coin production that makes it more interesting than its 1-cent face value. The 2004 Lincoln penny was struck during a time when pennies were still a major part of everyday life in the United States. In 2004, cash transactions were common, and pennies moved constantly through pockets, cash registers, and coin jars. This coin was produced by the United States Mint, which had been striking Lincoln cents since 1909. By 2004, the Lincoln penny was already one of the longest-running coin designs in American history, instantly recognizable to nearly everyone. What makes the 2004 no-mint Mark penny special is not a flashy redesign or a limited commemorative release. It's the absence of something, the missing mint mark. In the United States, most coins carry a small letter that tells you where they were made. Pennies struck in Denver carry a D. Pennies struck in San Francisco usually carry an S. But pennies made in Philadelphia traditionally have no mint mark at all. So when you see a 2004 penny without a letter under the date, it means it was struck in Philadelphia. In 2004, the Philadelphia Mint produced hundreds of millions of Lincoln pennies. That alone tells us something important. This is not a rare coin in the traditional sense. You could still find one today in circulation, especially if you go through old jars of change. But value in coin collecting is not only about rarity. It's about condition, errors, history, and demand. And this is where the story becomes more interesting. The 2004 Lincoln penny is made primarily of zinc, with a thin copper coating. This change happened back in 1982, when the rising price of copper made solid copper pennies too expensive to produce. By 2004, the zinc core penny was standard. It feels light in the hand, and over time, that thin copper coating can wear down, sometimes revealing the gray zinc underneath. Collectors often look closely at these coins because damage or unusual wear can sometimes reveal minting problems. The design of the 2004 penny is classic and familiar. On the front, Lincoln faces right, with the words "In God We Trust" above his head and "Liberty" to the left. The year 2004 appears to the right. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial stands centered, with the tiny seated statue of Lincoln visible between the columns if the coin is sharply struck. For many collectors, spotting that tiny Lincoln inside the memorial is a small thrill, a detail most people never notice. So why would anyone care about a 2004 no-mint Mark penny? The answer lies in errors and condition. While most of these coins are worth just 1 cent, a small number were struck with mistakes. These mistakes can include off-center strikes, doubled letters, weak strikes, or plating errors where the copper coating is incomplete or uneven. When such errors are confirmed by experts, they can significantly increase the coin's value. There have been real examples where 2004 no-mint Mark pennies sold for more than face value. In circulated condition, they usually sell for just a few cents. But in uncirculated condition, especially those graded by professional services, they can sell for several dollars. Error coins are where things get more exciting. Certain verified error pennies from 2004 have sold for tens or even hundreds of dollars, depending on how dramatic and clear the error is. Collectors also pay close attention to condition. A 2004 penny that has never been in circulation, with bright original luster and no scratches, is far more desirable than one pulled from pocket change. These high-grade coins are often found in original rolls saved by collectors or banks. When graded as near perfect, they can command a surprising premium, not because they are ancient, but because so few survive in flawless condition. Identifying a real 2004 no-mint Mark penny is actually simple. First, check the date. It must clearly read 2004. Then look just below the date. If there is no letter, that is correct for a Philadelphia penny. Next, examine the weight and color. A normal 2004 penny weighs about 2.5 grams and has a copper-colored surface. Be cautious of coins that look altered, unusually heavy, or oddly colored. as these may have been damaged or modified outside the mint. Fakes are uncommon for modern pennies, but altered coins do exist. Some people try to remove mint marks from Denver coins to make them appear more interesting. Under magnification, these alterations often leave scratches or uneven surfaces. A genuine no-mint mark penny will have smooth metal where the mint mark would normally be, not rough or scraped. One surprising fact about the 2004 penny is how many were saved when they were new. In the early 2000s, coin collecting was already popular online, and many people began saving rolls of coins on the chance they might become valuable someday. This means that while the coin is common, top-quality examples are still actively traded among collectors who specialize in modern issues. Collectors love the 2004 no-mint mark Lincoln penny because it represents a bridge between old and new. It carries the classic Lincoln Memorial design, which ended just a few years later in 2008. For many people, this coin feels familiar and nostalgic, reminding them of everyday life before digital payments took over. It's a reminder that even modern coins can be worth studying and preserving. Another fun detail is that the Lincoln Memorial design hides Lincoln's image twice on the same coin, once as a large portrait on the front and again as a tiny statue on the back. This makes it one of the few U.S. coins to show the same person on both sides at the same time. Many people carried these pennies for years without ever realizing that detail. Today, interest in modern Lincoln cents continues to grow. New collectors often start with coins like the 2004 penny because they are affordable and easy to find. From there, curiosity grows. People begin checking dates, mint marks, and small details they once ignored. A simple penny becomes a doorway into history, design, and the hidden world of minting errors. So the next time you see a 2004 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, don't dismiss it. Hold it for a moment. Look closely at the date, the details, and the condition. While it may not make you rich overnight, it carries a quiet story of American coinage, mass production, and the small imperfections that turn ordinary objects into collectibles. Sometimes, the most interesting treasures aren't locked away in vaults or buried in the ground. Sometimes, they're already in your pocket, waiting for you to notice them. And that's what makes the 2004 no-mint mark Lincoln penny worth talking about, worth checking, and worth remembering the next time you hear the sound of change in your hand. Welcome back. Today we're diving into a penny that may seem ordinary at first glance, yet has quietly captured the attention of collectors and savvy buyers alike, the 2006 Lincoln penny. While most of these coins circulate unnoticed in pockets and jars, some verified examples have surfaced in recent years commanding unusually high prices at auctions. It's not about hype. It's about rare details and hidden financial potential that only a keen eye can spot. Let's start with the basics. The 2006 penny is part of the modern Lincoln cent series, struck at the Denver Mint. The D mint mark signifies its origin, and like most pennies from this era, it is composed primarily of zinc with a thin copper plating. At first glance, this might appear like any penny you've handled dozens of times, yet subtle variations can set a coin apart in the eyes of collectors. Here's a detail collectors quietly watch. Certain 2006 pennies show minor striking anomalies. These can range from small die cracks to doubled features, or even subtle differences in the placement of the mint mark. Each of these details can completely change interest among seasoned buyers. It's why some pennies, indistinguishable to the casual observer, have quietly led to life-changing sale results for select examples. This is where many people get confused. Not every coin with a mint mark variation is valuable. Condition matters immensely. Circulated coins, even with minor anomalies, rarely bring more than a few dollars above face value. But a certified, high-grade example, especially one with an unusual striking feature, can reach figures that make even experienced collectors pause. The difference between a common example and a sought-after one is often a single visible detail under magnification. To understand why the 2006 continues to draw interest, it helps to consider its place in the Lincoln cent timeline. This was a period when the U.S. Mint was experimenting with production efficiency and new dies. Slight differences in die alignment or pressure during striking produced subtle varieties, and these quirks are exactly what modern collectors seek. Awareness of these tiny variations separates casual penny holders from those who uncover hidden financial potential in a seemingly ordinary coin. Let's look at realistic value ranges. Most circulated 2006 D pennies are worth only face value. In uncirculated condition, values typically range from $1 to a few dollars. But certified coins with distinct die errors, exceptional luster, or near-perfect preservation can see life-changing sale results for select examples. Again, the key is detail and condition combined. This difference can completely change interest. A small double die on the date or mint mark can elevate a coin from pocket change to a collectible worth hundreds, or in rare instances, even thousands. Collectors quietly watch these anomalies because they are scarce, yet verifiable through grading services and auction records. Another point worth noting is common mistakes that reduce value. Many owners unknowingly clean pennies, polish them, or store them in damaging conditions. Each of these actions can drastically reduce appeal to serious buyers. Here's a detail collectors quietly watch. Even fingerprints or surface scratches in uncirculated coins can make the difference between a standard resale and a quiet wealth discovery. Patience also plays a key role. Some sellers have held onto coins for years before realizing their true worth. A 2006 D penny tucked away in a collection or piggy bank could suddenly reveal unexpected income when the right buyer comes along. The value isn't in speed, it's in careful observation, verification, and timing. So, what should you do if you suspect your pennies might have hidden financial potential? Start by examining each coin under magnification. Look for mint mark anomalies, doubling, or unusual die marks. Compare what you see with verified auction records. Even modest differences can set a coin apart in the eyes of collectors. This is where many people get confused. It's not about guessing, it's about knowledge. Understanding which details matter and avoiding mistakes that reduce value positions you to uncover quiet wealth discoveries that others often overlook. In conclusion, the 2006 D Lincoln penny may appear ordinary, yet it holds the potential for hidden financial surprises when carefully examined. Circulated examples remain common, but those with subtle minting anomalies, preserved luster, and verified certification can offer life-changing sale results for select examples. The takeaway isn't to rush. Knowledge, patience, and careful evaluation always matter more than speed. If you have 2006 D pennies, take a closer look. You might be holding more than just pocket change. And to continue exploring hidden treasures in your collection, check out our next video on rare Lincoln pennies that have quietly sold for extraordinary prices. Every coin tells a story, and with the right knowledge, you can uncover the wealth quietly waiting in plain sight. Imagine this for a moment. A single penny, sitting unnoticed in a jar, a drawer, or even your pocket, quietly carrying a story that connects American history, modern coin collecting, and the possibility of hidden value. Today we are talking about a coin almost everyone has seen, but very few truly understand. The 2007 D Mint Mark Lincoln penny may look ordinary at first glance, but once you learn its story, you may never look at your spare change the same way again. The coin we are exploring today is a Lincoln 1-cent coin struck in 2007 with a D Mint mark. That small letter tells us it was made at the Denver Mint, one of the most important coin-producing facilities in the United States. In 2007, millions of these pennies were released into circulation, passing through countless hands. Because it feels so familiar, many people assume it has no story and no value beyond 1 cent. But that assumption is exactly why this penny deserves a closer look. To understand this coin, we need to go back to the year 2007. America was in a time of transition. The economy was showing early signs of strain, digital payments were becoming more common, and yet the humble penny was still being produced in massive numbers. The Lincoln cent design had already been part of American life for nearly a century, honoring the legacy of Abraham Lincoln. His portrait, first introduced in 1909, remained a symbol of unity, honesty, and endurance. The 2007 Lincoln penny was produced by the United States Mint as part of its regular circulation program. There was nothing flashy announced about it at the time. No special commemorative label, no collector packaging for most of them. These pennies were meant to be used, spent, and forgotten. That everyday purpose is exactly what makes them fascinating today. Now let's talk about the history behind the design you see on this coin. The obverse, or front, features the familiar portrait of Lincoln that had been used for decades. His calm expression faces right, symbolizing forward movement and progress. Above his head is the word Liberty, and to the right is the date 2007. Just below the date, you will find the D Mint mark, showing it was struck at the Denver Mint. The reverse side of the 2007 penny still shows the Lincoln Memorial design, which was used from 1959 through 2008. This means the 2007 D penny belongs to the final era of the memorial reverse, just 1 year before the design changed in 2009. That alone gives this coin an interesting place in history. It represents the closing chapter of a long-running design that many Americans grew up seeing every day in terms of metal. The 2007 D Lincoln penny is made primarily of zinc, with a thin copper coating. This composition began in 1982, when rising copper prices made it too expensive to produce solid copper cents. As a result, these modern pennies weigh less and sound different when dropped compared to older copper cents. While this might seem like a downgrade, it actually helps collectors quickly identify different eras of Lincoln cents. At first glance, all 2007 D pennies look the same. But collectors know that the smallest details can make a huge difference. Tiny variations in strike quality, surface condition, and alignment can separate a common circulated coin from one worth keeping. Coins that were struck sharply, with full detail and no damage, are far scarcer than you might think because most pennies enter circulation immediately and suffer wear. One of the most exciting aspects of the 2007 D Lincoln penny involves errors. Coin errors happen when something goes wrong during the minting process. These mistakes are not intentional, but they can make a coin highly desirable to collectors. In 2007 D pennies, collectors have found off-center strikes, where the design is slightly shifted, double die errors, where parts of the lettering appear doubled, and clipped planchets, where the coin has a missing section along the edge. These error coins are where the real value begins to appear. A normal, circulated 2007 D penny is usually worth just 1 cent. But an error coin can sell for anywhere from a few dollars to several $100s, depending on the type and severity of the error. In rare cases, dramatic errors in high condition have sold for even more. Condition plays a massive role in value. Collectors grade coins on a scale that ranges from heavily worn to near perfect. A 2007 D penny that has never been circulated, with full original luster and no visible marks, can be worth significantly more than face value. While these coins are not rare in terms of mintage, they are rare in top condition because so few were saved at the time. Auction records show that high-grade 2007 D Lincoln pennies have sold for surprising prices. Coins graded at the highest levels by professional grading services have reached prices that make people stop and stare. These are not everyday sales, but they prove an important point. Even modern coins can become valuable when condition, timing, and collector demand align. Of course, whenever value is involved, questions about authenticity follow. The good news is that faking a 2007 D penny is extremely unlikely, simply because the base coin is common. However, altered coins do exist. Some people attempt to add or modify mint marks, or alter coins to mimic errors. To identify a genuine coin, start by examining the mint mark. On a real 2007 D penny, the D is cleanly struck and positioned just below the date. Next, look closely at the surfaces. Genuine mint errors usually show natural flow lines, uneven metal movement, or consistent doubling across multiple letters. Artificial damage often looks rough, random, or inconsistent. If a coin seems unusual and valuable, having it examined by a professional grading service is the safest step. There are also fun and surprising facts tied to the 2007 D Lincoln penny. Because it was minted just before the major design change in 2009, some collectors see it as part of the final chapter of a familiar American icon. Children who were born around 2007 often grew up seeing this exact coin in circulation, making it a small time capsule of a specific era. Another interesting detail is how many of these pennies were produced. The Denver Mint struck hundreds of millions of them, yet only a tiny fraction remain in pristine condition today. This highlights a core truth of coin collecting. Rarity is not always about how many were made. It is often about how many survived in collectible condition. Collectors love the 2007 Lincoln penny not because it is ancient or exotic, but because it tells a relatable story. It reminds people that history is not always hidden in museums or vaults. Sometimes it is right there in your pocket, waiting to be noticed. For beginners, this coin is an excellent entry point into the world of collecting. It is affordable, easy to find, and full of learning opportunities. For experienced collectors, the challenge lies in finding the best examples and the most interesting errors. Searching through rolls of pennies can be both relaxing and thrilling, knowing that a small discovery could turn an ordinary coin into a standout piece. This sense of possibility keeps collectors coming back. As we reach the end of this story, take a moment to think about the pennies you may have ignored for years. The 2007 Mint Mark Lincoln penny teaches us that value is not always obvious. It depends on history, condition, detail, and curiosity. The next time you hear the quiet clink of a penny, remember that even the most common coin can hold an uncommon story. And somewhere out there, a single 2007 penny may still be waiting to be discovered, hiding in plain sight, ready to surprise the person who finally takes a closer look.